This is Saigon. It's April 1968, 1 month after the end of the suicidal Tet Offensive, 2 months after Viet Cong decover units and infiltrators entered the city under cover of the city's preparation for New Year's Day celebration, and, amongst the noise of firecrackers of this festive occasion, opened fire. Fighting raged throughout Saigon as the VC attacked U.S. and Vietnamese installations. Like these folks here going about their business, VC assault units rode motorbikes through these streets to their assigned objectives, including the U.S. Embassy. Tet caught the usually omniscient press corps and some of the higher headquarters by surprise. It seems that, like at Pearl Harbor, the Battle of the Bulge, the Yalu in Korea, and 9/11, the information was in the system but either unprocessed into intelligence or it was rejected or ignored as contrary to the boss's expectations. To correct this, higher headquarters decided to address the long-standing dearth of intelligence at lower levels with a novel approach by assigning trained military intelligence personnel to intelligence staff positions, instead of the normal practice of assigning those who were shot up, screwed up, short, or the funny new guy to the S2, G2 position. And, for the 1st Infantry Division, adding small MI detachments, Battlefield Information Control Centers, BICs, to each battalion, brigade, and to division, and, in a controversial move, consolidating the existing gaggle of MI detachments supporting the division commander on a need-to-know basis into a single battalion working directly for the division commander. Since I was a funny new guy, I, a tanker, with no intelligence training or experience, was placed on temporary duty from the 1st Air Cavalry Division, then fighting in the Ashau Valley up north, to evaluate the new battalion, the 1st Combat Intelligence Battalion, Provisional. After a brief training period by some Beltway bandits, I embarked on a flight north along QL-13, known then and now as Thunder Road, after the sound of exploding mines and artillery. Thunder Road was the main route from Saigon to the heart of Vietnam's rubber plantations. What wasn't single canopy jungle was rows of rubber trees with an overlapping canopy of leaves so thick that the range of our radios was cut in half. But beneath the canopy, it was like a city park. No undergrowth, and through it, Charlie moved troops and supplies from the Cambodian border, and the route was known as Surge's Jungle Road. Thunder Road was secured by the 2nd Battalion, 2nd Infantry, mechanized, in fire bases along the road called Thunder 1, Thunder 2, Thunder 3, and Thunder 4. A couple of villages and an Arvin Regimental headquarters were located along the road. The village of Shantan was the local district headquarters. The road also supported the local logging industry, which took advantage of the fact that the rubber in the jungle was cut 1,000 meters back from the road. What you hear next is from a tape recording I made 4 months in country. Some of the slides I described are missing, and I've tried to match the words with slides and 8mm movies that I also took during my tour along Thunder Road. From these, I hope that you will gain a sense of the scope and pace of the operations during the peak of the war in Vietnam, as well as one person's feelings about it all.
Well, here I am in Benoit, or Long Ben rather, headquarters USRV. And maybe in the background you can hear the sound of a Chinook helicopter flying overhead. No, that's a Huey. It's now the 20th of July, and I have finally gotten to a tape recorder. Tonight I'm at Lai K, which is at the southern end of the old 2nd of the 2nd area of operations. I borrowed a tape recorder from Captain Brooks, and I'm going to try to grab a few minutes and try to explain to you what's happening. I'm kind of whispering because I'm staying in an old French building. There's some people sleeping. You can hear in the background the sound of 8-inch cannons firing what we call H&I fires. But where I'm staying is right next to the perimeter of the wire. It's kind of hairy. Now what I've done is I've taken some pictures. And what I'm going to do is narrate what is in each one. The next picture is a picture of the song Saigon, which means Song Saigon River. This is the boundary line between the 25th Division and the 1st Division. On the horizon, about 2/3 of the way, or a third of the way across from the right, you'll see what looks like a mountain rising up above the horizon, possibly a little blue thing. This is what is known as the Nui Ba Den, or the Black Lady Mountain. Vietnam has these rather strange mountains just poking up out of the flat plains. The area, 3rd Corps area, as you can see from the 25th Division area, is very flat. Of course, as you go towards Quanaloy, which is to the right, it gets a lot hillier. And we'll go to the next block of slides and describe with them. Those I took after I arrived on Thunder Road, and show some of the people, some of the places that I work with. Slide number 9 is the picture of an M48 tank at Thunder 2. Now, these tanks are used to escort what we call the bullwhip, which is the resupply convoy for Quan Loy. Now, the next slide is a slide of the radar tower for the TPS-33 long-range radar, anti-personnel radar. These radars can spot people theoretically up to 10 kilometers. It's about 6 miles. In actuality, it's only about 2 miles. This is a slide of a 105 millimeter battery. These 105s provide the support for Thunder 3 and Thunder 1. If we were ever attacked at Thunder 3, these guns would be the primary source of defending us. Now, there are 10 kilometers, that's 6 miles away from Thunder 3, which is the maximum range for these guns. The guns at Thunder 3 would not necessarily defend Thunder 3, but they would defend Thunder 2. A scene looking to the southeast, and along Thunder Road you can see a convoy of these full-track cargo carriers. Well, yesterday around 2 o'clock, Tank Commander landed at the old Thunder 3 and told us that he wanted the Battlefield Information Control Center with his group, which we call Task Force X-Ray, which are based out of Lai Kay, working for the 3rd Brigade. And we got the order that we were moving into the Iron Triangle, which is south of Lai Kay. Iron Triangle at one time was a very bad place. We moved into it without any incidents, and we began to set up the Tactical Operations Center. The next slide is a picture of a Chinook helicopter. Now, this is leaving from Thunder 3, going out to Task Force X-Ray, around the Bonies. And this is a water trailer. Now, you can't get into where X-Ray is unless you have an armed convoy go in there. Well, this isn't worth it for a water trailer, so they've sling the full water trailer underneath the helicopter and fly it out to the field. Well, as soon as that chopper landed, I got on it and I flew out to Task Force X-Ray. Now, the Iron Triangle, which is where Task Force X-Ray is right now, used to be a great big rubber plantation. We had so much trouble with it that the 1st Division conducted an operation called the Rome Plow Operation. This is in which bulldozers moved in fender to fender, plow down all the rubber trees. It forced them to leave the Iron Triangle primarily, but there's still some of them there, so during these operations, go in there and root out the small number of people that are here. The smoke is to show the helicopter pilot which way the wind is blowing so he can land, and also exactly where to land. You hear the terminology, pop smoke, and this is a request for somebody to throw a smoke grenade so that the wind can blow. Everybody jokes about going down to Tansanut and popping smoke for the big 707 that takes them home. The next picture is Colonel Davison as he moves to his Tactical Operations Center. In the background you can see an armored personnel carrier, what we call an APC, with radio antennas on the top. With, of course, sandbags, as you can see, sandbags everywhere. Slide 14, well, that little dot is a jet fighter bomber going in on an airstrike on a VC position. The fighter bomber is again in the center and low to the right, so we blew up a bunch of bunkers.
What you've heard was recorded 34 years ago. What happened afterward is that we were hit hard that night by a Viet Cong mortar attack, resulting in 20 casualties, all wounded. Over the next few days, we busted jungle looking for Charlie and taking casualties from command-detonated mines and booby traps. We asked for and got additional infantry flown into the area to broaden the contact with the enemy. About this time, the test of the new MI organization was concluded, and the results were that before, there was no intelligence available to the commander, and after, with the addition of the Battlefield Information Control Center, he had access to everything that had happened in the area for the preceding 20 years. In August 1968, I returned to the 1st Cavalry Division and served as an intelligence officer in the Division Tactical Operations Center with the responsibility of briefing the division commander daily. This is the DTOC. I worked here for 7 months, working the phones on the left in intelligence and with operations on the right. Everything comes together here. from the battalions in the field, like the 2nd of the 2nd, from field artillery, aviation, and logistics. So the division commander, Major General George I. Forsyth, and his staff could, as Nathaniel Bedford Forrest said, get their fustest with the mostest. Everything was posted in report folders and posted on the big map. At this time, our area extended from Phuoc Vinh and War Zone D on the right, covering what was called Adams Road, and opposite the 5th VC Division advancing from Song Bay, and west past the Fish Hook, opposing the 1st NVA Division's advance along Surges Jungle Road, through the Rubber to the Dog's Head, opposing the 7th NVA Division's advance through War Zone C, and south to the Angel's Wing and Parrot's Beak against the 9th VC Division, where Air Cav units worked with the Brownwater Navy in NAVCAV operations. A good 3/4 of the hard intelligence that I worked with came from the 1st Squadron, 9th Cavalry. The 1st of the 9th covered the entire division front using OH scout ships at grass top level, zipping between the trees, reporting the size and type of footprints and wheel tracks. Above them, armed to the teeth, flew Cobra gunships watching over the scouts. If Charlie made the mistake of shooting at a scout, the Cobras rolled in with miniguns, grenade launcher, and rockets blazing away. Once contact was made, the troop commander could insert his own aerial infantry platoon, called the Blues, to grab a hold of the enemy, and then everybody piled on. As the battle developed, commanders reached out and picked up units from wherever they were available and flew them to where they were needed to block or attack. While all infantry units in Vietnam practiced air mobile assault, the 1st Air Cav invented the business and was the masters of the art. The division could lift entire battalions in one lift and with its own aircraft. Artillery was flown in early to provide 24-hour fire support from bases we called LZs, landing zones, such as this one with the 2nd Battalion, 7th Cavalry. The 2nd of the 7th, once part of Custer's command at Little Bighorn, also fought in the Ia Drang Valley, as featured in We Were Soldiers Once. Gary Owen was the name of an Irish ballad adopted by the 7th Cavalry and which became the official song and a greeting between members of the 1st Cav, past and present, even today. Several times during my tour, Charlie would attack bases like this with full regiments at odds of greater than 20-1, only to be blown away by artillerymen firing guns such as these, point blank, with flechette-filled beehive rounds at muzzle burst, and together with the full might of American firepower, gunships, fighters, and Puff, the magic dragon. At times like these, the phones in the DTOC fell silent, and we listened to the Fire Control and Air-Ground Operations Net for calls for fire or medevac to figure out what was going on. The ground commanders were too busy fighting to report. Charlie used to pre-stock his avenue of advance through the jungle with food, ammunition, and supplies needed to support combat operations against us, much like we did in Desert Storm, only more so. Hard to believe it, below these trees lie a network of bases and trails. Those reports from the 1st and the 9th Cav and from long-range reconnaissance patrols, LRPs, led me to believe that these bases were about 10 kilometers apart along Surges Jungle Road, which took advantage of the dense cover of the jungle and rubber trees to hide under. Colonel Stansbury's brigade, operating out of Quan Loy, inserted the 3rd Vietnamese Marine Battalion, who were under his operational control, into the jungle near a Special Forces camp, where they found an enormous cache of weapons, ammunition, and food. These weapons had already been lifted out from where they were found. 81mm mortars, 12.7mm heavy machine guns on wheels, and those are the wheel tracks reported by the 1st of the 9th, 18 inches apart. Enough 60mm mortars to equip a regiment. Some Mosin Nagant model 1891 Soviet sniper rifles, and the ubiquitous and very nasty RPG-7 anti-tank rockets, and some very unusual sets of rails. I needed to see more of this cache and flew out to the Special Forces base. Down below is the rubber plantation in the town of An Loc, where 3 years later North Vietnamese tanks went head-to-head with ours. Long gone were the black pajamas and Ho Chi Minh sandals made from rubber tires. There was so much stuff here that it took C-130s to haul it out. In addition to the usual collection of mortar rounds were these 240mm super caliber warheads fixed to standard 122mm rockets. That's what those odd-looking rails at Quan Loy were for. I never found out which base was the target. Charlie's big offensive against Saigon was chewed up as it moved through the Cav territory to be easily repulsed by forces closer to Saigon. And then Charlie had to slug his way back north, with us all over his back. As for intelligence, none of the Cav's battalions got the kind it needed, and which was available, and for lack of a dedicated pipeline, such as a BIC, to the big bucket where National Resources had it all stacked up. Nowadays, internet technology provides that kind of link. As my tour was coming to an end, my thoughts turned ever more to my life in the real world, and here's what I said.
There's a few things I want to say to my wife. The one big thing that I keep coming back to is that you're the most wonderful thing that has ever happened to me in my life. And as for our future, I want to stay with the Army. One of these days, in about 8.5 months, I'll be coming home to stay.
Well, as a professional soldier, I should have known that if the Army wanted me to have a wife and family, they would have issued me one. It was a lousy war, a long war, one that wasn't popular at home, but what the hell, for my generation, it was the only war we had.